Bonjour class! I know that we spent ages finishing off the class novel last Friday, so we have no class novel, and I'm not able to put a class novel up online because of copyright issues. So I am going to start to write one especially for you guys, which is set present day, right smack bang in the middle of this coronavirus outbreak. I know how much you like myths and legends, so I've kind of based it around that, and I've also based it in Caithness to make it have a bit of a local feel to it. So I'm going to do a chapter a day. I'll video myself saying it, and one of the things I want you to do today, each day, I would like you to listen to a chapter, and I will post some questions on Google Classroom afterwards. Okay, so chapter 1. My mum's a scientist, a zoo scientist or something. She works with animals anyway, and she works away a lot. In fact, I never really see her, and I don't really know her. Let me explain. Mum and Dad are separated. They still get on, but Mum's job meant she never really saw either of us, and it started to get more and more difficult for us to be together. Dad was a stay-at-home dad, and really good at it. He'd take me to school every morning before I could go by myself. When I got back from school, he had cleaned the house before he started on dinner. He was at every open afternoon, every school show, and every annual fair that the Parent Council would organise. Mum was she just wasn't there. She would say she would be and then get a phone call, and that was that. It was always her job, she said, and Dad never minded. So imagine my surprise when I had to go and stay with her for a while. Long story short, there was this virus going around, and Dad was classed as vulnerable. He had a primary immune disorder or something, meaning that he was at risk if he did get this virus. Mum had rung to say that I should go and stay with her. To begin with, Dad had been angry with her, then upset, then realised that actually she did have a point. So there I was, in Mum's car travelling north to where she was working. The silence was awkward. Mum had initially tried to make conversation, but I wasn't in a mood to talk. Dad's anger had worn off after a while, but mine was still very much there. The car journey was taking too long, and I was getting tired of glaring angrily out of the window, but I was not going to give in. "Do you still like animals?" Mum asked, and I shrugged. "Suppose," I said. I loved animals, but I wasn't going to let her know that. "I can't wait for you to meet Darwin then," Mum said as she grinned. "Darwin?" I asked, knowing I was sounding a little too interested. "Is that a dog?" "Yes," Mum said slowly. "He's a dog. He's a real darling. You're going to love him." And silence again. As we got closer and closer to Mum's house, I started to wonder what living here would be like. It would only be for a month or so, I was sure, but I may as well give it a go. Immediately, guilt that I might enjoy myself while Dad was on his own rushed through me, and I remembered that absolutely I could not enjoy living here. Mum turned the car off the main road, and for a long time we drove casually along a single track road. Eventually, just as I thought we were getting lost, Mum turned down a bumpy track, parking the car in a bored car park. The track had ended, but there was no house nearby. "Right, we're here," she smiled, and I looked around to see if I'd missed something. I hadn't. There was nothing but moorland. I didn't get out of the car as I was so stunned, but Mum opened my door for me before getting my bulky suitcase out of the boot. As I walked around the car park, I saw a cottage a bit further downhill. There was no road to it, and I started to feel a little bit uneasy about the possibility this was my new house. The uneasiness turned to disbelief as Mum started trailing my suitcase down the hill towards the cottage, calling for me to keep up. What sort of person lives in a house which doesn't even have a road? I thought to myself. As we got closer, I got a better view of the front. The house looked like it had not changed for 100 years. But when Mum unlocked the door and walked in, I saw that the inside was entirely different. I'd half expected a peat fire in the middle of the room, a bit like the farm museums we used to visit. Instead, there were polished kitchen cabinets. Light flooded in from a floor-to-ceiling window at the opposite side of the room, shining on the most immaculate room I'd ever set foot in. It seemed like I was standing in an inner-city penthouse, not an off-grid cottage which you had to walk to get to. You can close your mouth now, Mum said, laughing at me, and began whistling. Darwin! Darwin! I heard the sound of paw pads on lino flooring and turned around to see the biggest dog I'd ever laid eyes on. I wasn't scared of dogs, but Darwin's size was intimidating. His shoulders came up to my waist, and his head was as wide as 2 footballs. Darwin came up to me, sniffed me once, and then trotted over to Mum, who putting his paws onto her shoulders. Mum staggered backwards until she was resting against the wall. She took his gigantic paws and gently pushed them off. No, she said, you know you can't do that now you're fully grown. I paused. That's not a dog, that's a horse. Mum smiled at me. He's very big, isn't he? She grinned. Probably the biggest dog you've ever seen. He's a full 6 inches higher than the biggest... He's a full 6 inches higher than a Great Dane and about twice the width. Aren't you, sweetie? Darwin leaned against her as she stroked his ears. Look, we'll get you settled and then we'll have a cup of tea, she said finally. Come on, you great lump. Darwin obeyed as though Great Lump was his actual name. Mum showed me the narrow stairs leading to the small 2 bedrooms. I volunteered to take the suitcase upstairs, but she shrugged me off, exclaiming that she was a lot more used to these awkward stairs than I was. My room was cosy, and I noticed Mum had put fresh flowers on the chest of drawers. There was a chunk that had been gnawed at on the chest of drawers, which looked bigger than a rodent, but smaller than Darwin. I didn't want to ask. What do you think, then? Mum asked, sounding too excited to hear my answer. What do you think, then? Mum asked, sounding excited to hear my answer. I forced a smile and nodded. Thank you for letting me say, I said, trying not to grit my teeth. Absolutely my pleasure, darling, she beamed. I've missed you. I was pleased when Darwin came into the room to distract Mum. Come on, you great lump, she cried. You know you struggled to get down those stairs. Mum left with Darwin while I took another glance around the room. It was fairly unremarkable. A bed, a chewed chest of drawers, a few books rested against wooden bookends, and a wooden chest at the foot of the bed. Nothing exciting, nothing noteworthy. The cup of tea was drunk in silence, except when Darwin barked once at the floor-to-ceiling window. His bark sounded like it was coming from all directions, and Mum sat forward on the edge of her seat until he had calmed down and settled at her feet. I went to bed early that night, staring out of the roof window until I started to feel my eyes drooping closed. Just as I was beginning to relax and fall asleep, I was startled awake by an ear-shattering howl from downstairs. The chest of drawers trembled under the pitch of the unnatural sound, moving the vase of flowers to the edge. My stomach flipped over as the prolonged howl faded away, and any chance of sleep was well gone. Shakily, I shuffled out of bed and crept towards the door. And that's the end of the chapter. So I will video the next chapter to put up on Tuesday morning, and I will post some questions about this chapter on Google Classroom for you to answer if you like in the comments. Okay, so until tomorrow. Bye bye.